Hello, Internet. It is Dee. Today, we are going to talk about eyeshadow quads. Why eyeshadow quads? Mostly because I bought a whole bunch of them, so I have them on hand. I should talk about them. But also because I think eyeshadow quads are a really good way for someone who's still kind of inexperienced with makeup and especially doing eyeshadow looks to kind of dip your toe in a bit and start playing around with different colors and shapes and whatnot. It's where I started as a teenager doing a lot of interesting eyeshadow looks. Well, interesting. I'm not sure how good they looked at the time, but I learned. I have evolved. I've gotten better. That and also eyeshadow quads are pretty ubiquitous in the drugstore or grocery store or your Walmarts or your Targets or your everyday shopping sort of places. Most brands out there have some kind of quad these days, I feel like. They're a lot cheaper than trying to buy like a whole giant palette of colors if you're not really sure you're gonna need or use all of those. You can just take a look at the quads, be like, I like those colors. Yes, buy that, and there you go. You just have an instant eye look. Some of them are even labeled these days, like a lot of these Wet n Wild quads just come with a little thing right in there that's like transition, crease, brow bone, eyelid. So, you don't have to think very hard. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of the equation, but that doesn't mean you can't still have fun with them and learn a thing or two. So for today, I'm going to be using some of these Wet n Wild eyeshadow quads, mostly because I bought a whole bunch of them in those special sets I got during Black Friday. Some of these are limited edition shades, I believe, but if you go to a store that carries Wet n Wild, they carry these, and they're $3 for like just one of these. Like, they're so cheap. But even if you don't want to go the cheapest of cheap route, many other brands have them, or at least something pretty similar. I haven't really looked at the selection as much as of late because I personally tend to now gravitate toward full, like, big size eyeshadow palettes. But that's because, in essence, I know what I want from them and I know what I'm doing with them. But part of how I learned that was actually starting out with eyeshadow quads. So today, I will attempt to teach you what I know. If you catch my arm in any shots and you're like, whoa, what the heck? It's because I was swatching a bunch of these earlier because I haven't actually tried these. And whenever I get new eyeshadows, I like to swatch them on my hand first to kind of get an idea of the formula and get an idea of how they're going to be applying to my eye. Eyeshadow formula and swatching them and what to look for could probably be a whole nother video, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Just, this is what I do before I try something, just to be like, okay, how's this going to look? How's it going to perform? Overall, for, like $3 per palette, these shadows do pretty good. There's a few shades that I didn't think swatched very well that look like they might take some extra work, but hopefully I can maybe find a way to coax some color out of them. And I mean, with a price that low, I'm not like expecting magic here, but I mean, even some high-end palettes have some like weird formulas sometimes, so it doesn't matter the cost. I always swatch before I start mixing and blending and putting colors on my eyes, just because it's a lot easier to wipe this off and play around on here than it is my face. So, yeah. Now, the back of all these little Wet n Wild quads actually have a little picture and a guide to get the look. So, if you look here, it actually tells us just right up front, like, oh, hey, look, here's a look you can do, and here's the colors and where they go. So, if you just have zero idea of what you're doing, you can, at the very least, start there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first just follow their steps on here to show you how that looks. But then I'm going to branch out a little and show you some other ways you can combine these same four colors in different arrangements on your eye to get slightly different effects. So I'm going to start with the palette Fit for a Queen. This was from the Fire Dragon and Ice Dragon box, which I believe is still available, maybe? But even if it's not, this same idea will apply pretty much regardless of the actual colors in the palette. It's more the tone and like the light and darkness of the colors I'm working with as opposed to the exact colors themselves. At the top of each of these palettes, and typically in most of your quads that you'll find probably some fairly neutral brownish beigey shade, and here they just actually label it flat out transition. This is the color that you're going to use to, well, transition between colors to an extent, but usually just it's a good base color to start with. And it's oftentimes these very just kind of neutral beigey browns because, well, you know, colors. Brown is made up of other colors, so in essence, all colors will blend into brown. You'll never hit a point where it's just like, it won't blend, why? A light beigey brown doesn't have to be your transition color depending on what look you're creating. But it's always a safe bet because, well, everything will blend into brown. You know, versus if you're trying to make some kind of nice blended gradient, if there's two shades that are just too separate from each other on the color wheel, well, they're not going to blend, or even if they do, they're probably going to turn into some weird brown shade anyway. So, why not choose the brown shade that's going to be the one to blend into the others just to start with? On a similar note, once you get used to what to look for in these, if you do get a big palette, you can then easily find your transition shades that you want for other looks you're making. On these two palettes, this one is a cool tone palette and this one is a warm tone palette, so you can see that the transitions, while it's similar, just kind of beigey brown, this one is definitely a more cool toned one and this one's a lot warmer. And that will just once again help with blending more of a cool toned or warm tone color into it. Your transition shade you almost always want to also be a matte color. As you can see here, there's no particular shimmer or shine to that top shade because the transition is going to kind of just go a lot into the crease and a little bit above and below typically, and you don't really need a lot of light hitting that area, so it's just, you know, just your blank slate, your starter color. Now, I've already primed my eyes with some concealer that's a little bit lighter than my skin tone just to have this nice, really light colored base for everything to stick to and pop out from. I'm going to start with a small fluffy blending brush about that size, take it into our transition shade here, and then gently pat that onto my lid, just kind of real messy, just right kind of in the middle of everything. I'm gently tapping it right now because I got a lot of product on there and I don't want to start swishing around yet or the powder is just going to start flying everywhere. I need it to just kind of stick down a bit first. Once I've got that down, I'm going to come in with a little bit bigger and fluffier blending brush and just start to try to kind of buff out the edges of it so it, you know, it looks more like a nice shadowy gradient in my eye and less of just a weird brown blob that I stuck on it. Alright, so we have our base transition color down. As for the next color to pick out of these, I don't think the order matters so much now. I could start with the lighter shade and then go darker. I could start with the darker shade and go lighter. I'm not sure if it really matters with this particular palette that much. I think I'm going to go in with the darkest shade, which is going to be the crease shade here. And I'm still going to try to lay out my look similar as to how they did on the back here. They have it in a pretty small area, all things considered, in this picture. So I'm going to use this thinner angled brush, get some of that on there, and then I'm going to start by placing it on the outer part of my eye here, and then swoop it inward, and then kind of fatten out and fill out the part on the outer edge, because it looks like in our diagram here that they have it thicker near the outer edge and then thinner as it goes in toward the nose. I'm keeping it mostly in the crease, though I am bringing it a little ways down onto my actual eyelid. And right now it looks really sharp and harsh, but you know, that's because we haven't blended it yet. Okay, I think that's about what they were going for on that picture. And now I'm just going to take my blending brush and just kind of try to smooth that out a little again. Alright, here's where we're at now. Looking pretty good, I'd say. Now for the eyelid shade, which they, I think, gave us more of. I don't know, these ones are a little bit wider, but this one's a little bit longer. I'm not always so great with my spatial volume measuring ability, but it looks like they gave us more, kind of, at least. Which is good because In this picture, boy, they're putting all of that gold like all over the lid. So I think they're expecting us to use this shade a bit more. Since this shade is particularly shiny and shimmery, I'm going to use my finger to apply it because I found, unless you've swatched it and it's felt pretty powdery, a lot of times, at least in my experience, the more shiny and metallic an eyeshadow is, the more pressed together it feels, and the less brushes tend to pick it up really well unless they're wet. And even that kind of, sort of, is iffy sometimes. So I'm just gonna load it up on my finger. And just gonna go in, I'm gonna start just kind of in the middle to get kind of the most on there. And then just start buffing it around. Get some more if I need it. This isn't the most powerful gold I've used, but it's not a bad shade. Yes, that's a lot of gold. At this point, I feel like I lost a little bit of that dark crease color I wanted, so I'm gonna try to put a little bit more of that in and kind of blend it all back together. And this time I'm gonna use a little bit bigger, fluffier brush to do it. There we go. I feel like that brought a little bit more depth and dimension back to this look. And you know what, while we're at it, I'm gonna add a little bit more of that transition brown back in. Just because. Oh, that was actually a lot darker than I intended. Oops. Blending brush, come to my rescue. Okay, in this particular palette, that transition shade is like way more pigmented actually than the darker red shade. I kind of forgot and was not prepared for that. This is another reason why I swatch things ahead of time. Although even then I still forget sometimes. I'm gonna stop messing with that. And finally, we have the brow bone shade, the lightest on here. And as it says on the proverbial and somewhat literal tin, just not an actual tin, you know what I mean, I'm going to put it on my brow bone. This one's also kind of shimmery. It's a little bit more powdery than the gold shade was, but I think I'm still gonna stick with my finger for it. I'm just gonna swoop it up there, fluff it out a little bit. There we go. And you know, that just kind of adds a nice subtle, slight shimmer to that area. But another good place to use the kind of highlighting brow bone shade is in the inner corner of your eye. So just kind of like, I typically put on my pinky and just kind of boop it in right there. I smudged another color in there. How did I do that? How did that get on my finger? There we go. And it just kind of lights up your eye a little bit more, makes it look more open. Well, there we go. That's the look they showed on here. It just, you know, without me putting mascara on or anything yet. But let's say, hey, I've done that look. I've done that look a bunch of times. I've followed the back like this. I'm tired of it. Or maybe this particular thing doesn't look as good on your eye shape. Well, let's try some other shapes. Now for my next look, I'm going to keep it pretty similar to this look here, but with a little bit of a variation that I personally wear quite a lot and I think looks, just has like a little bit more of a pop to it, more dimension. I don't really like my eyelid just being all one color like that. I like to add some more definition. I'm going to start off exactly the same as I did the first eye, just taking that transition color and blobbing it kind of all just up in the crease and around. Now I'm going to go back into the dark crease color, but instead of just putting it right in the crease like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this flat brush here, load up quite a bit on it, and I'm going to take it and stamp it to start just right on the outer corner. And now I'm going to kind of pat it out a little bit, trying to stay within my general eye shape, but going a little past my actual eyelid. Get a little bit more, bring it up into the crease a little bit. There we go, kind of like that. It looks really weird when it's not blended, but we'll get there. Now I'm going to get more on my brush, and now I'm going to stamp it, not exactly in the inner corner where we put that highlight shade before, but in the inner corner, but on my lid itself. I'm going to just kind of do a similar thing, just really patting down that color there, bringing it up into the crease a little bit. There we go. And now to make this a little bit more evened out, I'm just going to come back to the other side, bring it a little bit more onto the eyelid. I'm kind of just leaving this like blank space in the eyelid itself. Like, I can pull a little bit of color in there, but I'm not trying to concentrate the color in the middle. So, if it's just kind of patchy in there, that's fine. Connect it just a little bit, just a hint of it. There we go, and kind of have it like that. And now we blend. I don't want to move this around too much, so I'm just kind of patting at it gently, just to blur away the harsh edges. Ugh, been holding my eyebrows up for too long. My forehead hurts. My eyebrow muscles are tired. There we go. So now it looks like that. Once again, I'm going to take the gold shade on my finger, but this time I'm opposed to putting it over the entire lid. I'm just going to focus it right in that middle spot that I left kind of open. And I kind of tap it along the edges of that dark color just to sort of blend it a little bit. And if I want a little bit more definition, I can come back with my dark color, tap it over the edges of that shiny color so that we kind of just have a nice little gradient right there. And then for the brow bone color, I'm just going to do the exact same thing I did on the other eye. Just pop a little bit of it up right here and a little right in the inner corner. So here we have the same eyeshadow palette, same colors, but you can see they're creating a very different effect. It makes my eye look a little darker and more dramatic, maybe slightly more deep set, but then with that highlight there, it gives it a pop too, versus this one where our only kind of real dark dramatic spot is just sort of right up in this corner. Now, to finish off these looks, I like putting some eyeshadow on my lower lid. Really, with both of these, I don't think I'd change it that much. I'm going to get my angled brush, and I'm going to pick up some of the transition shade, and I'm just going to kind of very loosely line my lower lid with that, and then just kind of fluff it out a little bit. And then with a much smaller angled brush, I'm going to take the dark crease shade and just concentrate that on the outer half. For this look, what I think I'm gonna do is start with that transition shade again. This time I'm gonna bring it down a little bit further though, since this look is a little bit more dramatic. And to sort of mimic what's going on the top of my lid, I'm going to take my angled brush with the dark crease shade, put it on this little outer part, but now I'm going to try to mirror where I put it up top a little bit and join them together, and also bring it in the inner corner a little bit. Now, this is such a small area that I don't know if I can apply with my fingers, so I'm going to try applying that gold eyelid shade with a brush, see if it can stick. And if not, well, I'll try to find something else. And then I'm just going to put that right in the middle. Oh, I can see it. It clung to the brush okay. It might not be as shiny putting on with the brush, but it doesn't need to be super bright on my lower lid like that. And now, in essence, what I've done is I've carried over what I did up here onto my lower lid, so they just sort of all seamlessly meld together. And, it kind of makes this softer, smoky look, versus I'd call this just a little bit more of like a casual day wear sort of look. I mean, not that I really change my makeup for night events versus day events, because I just wear dramatic makeup when I wear the fuck I want. But if you want something a little more toned down, this is a good, easy, simple look. But this is a way that, with the exact same palette, you could kind of spice it up a little if you do want something more dramatic out of your look. I'm going to finish both of these eyes off camera, because I'm going to just do the same thing, just the same kind of eyeliner and mascara and whatever on both. And then I can show you the finished look for both of them. Alright, I'm back. I underped my hair a little bit, and I went ahead and kind of just did like a 2 different sides comparison sort of thing. So I finished with 2 different lip colors. For the rest of the eye makeup, I kept it pretty similar. I just did a really thin black liner with a bit of a wing on each side and mascara, but I did decide to put some false lashes on, and I chose different ones for each eye look. Now for this first look we did, because it kind of was concentrating our shadow kind of right up and in here, I chose this demi wispy, well obviously like I'm wearing the other one, but specifically I chose this one because of its shape where it flares out at the end a bit, and I thought that would kind of flatter this look. Versus for this side, that's a little bit more, the shadow is in both the inner and outer corner. I went ahead and went with the regular wispies and their uniform size throughout. Now, as you can tell if I kind of get in a little bit closer, these ones are distinctly longer than these ones too. So this side creates, a lot more of a natural look that kind of wings out a little bit near the edge. versus these are uniform all the way around, but they're just longer and a bit more dramatic, which I thought matched this side more. And then for the lips, just to play around a little, I used both of the warm shades that came in the box set I got. These are the MegaLast Liquid Catsuit metallic lipsticks, and I chose this one for this side because I thought it was a little bit lighter. And I mean, it's a metallic lip, so it's still a little bit dramatic, yes, but it's a little bit lighter, and I felt a little bit more casual than this really kind of dark warm shade that I thought kind of matched this dramatic look over here. The rest of my face, like, there's nothing different with my blush or my highlight or anything. So that's our first two looks. Side A and side B. As we go on to more looks, I'm going to use a different palette just so we don't get all tired of these colors. So don't worry, if you're a fan of cool tones, those are coming up next. Hi, I'm back. Now with a redone bare face. Well, not really bare face, bare eyes. So now we're gonna go for the cool toned one that I kept showing off before, but I didn't actually do anything with. But even though the color palette is different, the same general idea is going to apply, so you should be able to apply this to any other quad. For this next look, I'm still gonna be doing something pretty dang similar to what you've been seeing, but hey, repetition is good practice or something, so we're just gonna keep doing it. So starting with my base transition shade here, I'm just slapping that in the same place we've been putting it. Blend out the edges a little again. Now for our darkest shade, the crease shade here, I am going to be putting that in my crease, but I'm also going to be putting it in just the kind of whole back part of my outer eyelid too. Looks quite pigmented on the brush. Let's see how it looks on my eye. Oh wow, okay, yeah, you're a strong one. When there are these really strong dark pigments like this that often can kind of leave some of the fallout, I do tend to start by just patting it on a little bit and not trying to, I can do little sweeps with my brush, but I don't want to sweep too much because that can just make a huge mess. Just very gentle. I think to detail this out more, I'm going to switch to a slightly more tapered brush because this is intense. And I'm bringing it a little into the crease and over here, but kind of trying to keep it mostly concentrated on this outer half of my eyelid here. And then just kind of bringing it up in kind of this direction, just a tad. If you do get fallout like this, I just like taking the big fluffy blendy brushes and making sure they're clean and just kind of going Well, that didn't get it quite off exactly. Let's try a bigger brush. Usually enough sweeping will kind of get it off. If you have to clean up the area a little bit later, it's no big deal. Concealer is the eraser tool of makeup. Speaking of this guy, I'm gonna just start buffing out the edges a little bit. Now I do want a part kind of right on my outer lid where that shade is pretty intense, so I'm just gonna put a little bit on my finger and touch that right in to the outer edge here, and then just kind of gently buff it in with my finger. And since I already kind of blended out that color elsewhere, although it could probably use a little bit more blending now that I look at it, I'm not going to try to blend the part that I just put down much because I do want it more concentrated right there. Let's see, looking at it, bring it a little further in. I'm going to be blending it with our lighter shade, and I want to create a bit of a gradient, so bringing it a little further this way into my eye than I actually intend for it to look in the finished version here. Okay, now I'm going in with our, I guess I call it our shiniest medium color shade here. It's this very iridescent purple. From swatching this, I can tell that it's a little bit of a stickier, chunkier formula that wants to kind of build up a bit. It's not super pigmented, just one swipe, but it does kind of stick to itself. So these types of formulas typically don't do that great with a brush at all. So I'm just gonna wad up a bunch on my finger. And now I wanna concentrate this from the inner corner, kind of midway into the eye. So I'm going to start putting it here. Oh, that actually applies pretty nice with my finger. This actually is better than I thought it was going to be. And now I'm pulling it more toward the center of my eyelid. And it's starting to layer over that blue and create a really nice iridescent effect there. That's what I love about like those really shiny iridescent lid colors. They can be a little finicky to work with, but oh, when they go on and they just get so shiny, it's so nice. Let's build it up a little bit more. See if I can sweep that off. Yeah, see, that guy swept right off. Dang, I like that color. That is a nice color. And then finally, to finish it off, I'm going to use their lightest color in here that they've labeled the brow bone color, and pretty much just do the same thing I've been doing for the other looks. Take a little bit of it on the brow bone itself for that nice little highlight there, and also right in the inner corner there, the corneriest of the corner part, the most corner. Sometimes the brush doesn't really want to get in that spot too well. So now to finish this one on the lower lid, I think I'm just going to do that right now. I'm going to start with just a little bit of that transition color. I've tapped a lot of the excess off and kind of just run that under there. Like, I don't want a lot of that color there. I kind of just want a base to blend on. Then with a very, very thin little brush, I'm going to take our dark crease shade and put that on the outer half here, kind of as a liner. Ooh, that lines nicely. I like that. Buff it out just a little bit. And now I want to take that really shimmery color and put it in this area, but problem. Using my fingers right up in here in any sort of precise fashion is going to be rather difficult. So, to try to see if I can use my itty bitty brush and actually have some color come through, I'm going to first grab some setting spray and wet my brush a little bit. You know, it doesn't need to be dripping here, just enough that it kind of has a little bit of cling to it so that I can actually see some of that product on there, and we'll see if that will help it stick in here when I try to line with it. Yeah, there we go, that's kind of working. I had a little excess fall off, but that's fine. There we go, so we just kind of mirrored the look onto the lower lid. Just, you know, not as much happening, just a little more subtle. Spraying your brush with setting spray to pick up some of those peskier, really shiny colors. It doesn't always work. It really does depend on the individual formula of the eyeshadow, but if it's not working that great with a regular dry brush, give it a shot. It's kind of your next go-to if that's not working. And if even that doesn't work, it might just be a shade that's so stubborn it needs to just be applied with a finger. When in doubt, fingers always seem to work for those really shimmery metallic colors, but sometimes you can convince them to work with a brush. Now this last look I have in mind is going to be a little weird. I'm not sure how well it's going to work with this particular palette, but I'm going to try, because if you have the right colors, it makes a really nice effect. And this final look I'm doing is pretty much just going to be a pure gradient. I'm not really going to be focusing on any particular shapes in my eye or anything. I just want to start from the lightest color up here and move to the darkest color at my lash line. So, as opposed to starting with the transition shade like I've been doing for literally every eye look up to this one, for this one I am going to be starting with our lightest shade here. This just pure gradient effect is something you can do with pretty much just any group of colors you want, as long as each color that's touching can blend into each other via color physics, so to speak. So, you know, you couldn't blend a pink next to a green or a purple next to a yellow very well. But you could certainly blend a green into a blue or a purple, or a red into a yellow or purple, stuff like that. I'm gonna assume you know your colors. So, starting with the lightest shade, and really splatting that on there. I mean, it's so light, and my lids are so light, it's not like you see it stand out all that much, but it will add some shimmer, theoretically. Now I'm moving on to our second lightest shade, which in this case is a transition color. And what do you know, it's kind of ending up exactly where I've been putting most of the other transition colors. I am going to try to keep it a little bit higher this time, though. That actually didn't really need much blending that time. Now I'm moving into our second darkest shade, which is this purple here. It's very iridescent, so it's not really made to go in the crease. So I'm going to want to bring it down far enough that you can still see the shiny part and it doesn't just get eaten up by my crease up here. I'm going to try a brush to start just to see how that works, and if that's just not behaving very well, well, we'll try something else. Yeah, see, that shade looks like nothing if I try to put it on with a brush. So, finger attempt it is. Messy though it may be, I have a look in mind, and I want to try to get it. I'm gonna bring that down pretty far onto the lid, just kind of leaving a little space at the bottom. You know, trying to put enough on my lid that it can still kind of catch the light. This is a really nice, like, kind of purple light blue duochrome when it hits the light just right. And I like it. And now finally, going to a thinner tapered brush for this one. For our darkest shade, and I know this one's real dark, so I don't want to overdo it, taking that on. And now, kind of aligning my eye with it, but not so precisely. But just keeping it all on the lower half of my eyelid. Oh, the fallout. This one really likes to poof everywhere. And I'm kind of shaping into a bit of a cat eye right now. Yeah, I'm gonna blend that out though. It floofed so badly. A lot of times I do my eye makeup first so that if this happens, I don't have to go over and redo anything, but I wanted to start with my face makeup already on for this video, so, well, that's just sort of what happens sometimes. If you see a weird bluish shadow there, well, I'm not gonna fix it right now, sorry. Alright, this has a really harsh line right now, so let's try to blend it out a little bit. It's almost a little bit too big of a brush. Let's try a smaller one. Okay, it's blending out a little bit, but I think I'm just gonna go in with a little bit of that purple crease shade and help blend out the dark blue over it. When in doubt, if something's not blending, you can just go back with your previous color and try to layer it back over, and then just kind of trade off till you get a bit of a gradient going. Okay, there we go. That's starting to get a little smoother. I'm gonna see if I can just put a little bit on my finger, just right on the bottom there. Now for the bottom lid on this look, I'm going to pretty much just mirror once again this gradient I did here, just on a smaller scale. I'm gonna start with our lightest shade and just kind of run it in general under my eye. It's a really light shade, so it's not going to like stand out too much anyway. But it might also help cover up some of those dark splotchy bits I spilled down here anyway. And then I'm gonna just kind of merge it up to where it ended up here. And now the transition shade, taking on a little bit thinner of a brush, tapping off the excess, and kind of just running that right under there, pulling it out a little bit. And moving down to increasingly thinner brushes. This tapered brush I have, that's a little bit of a bigger tapered brush. This one I am going to get wet. Just try to get the best performance out of it I can. Grabbing some of that iridescent purple. And this I am going to just run all right up along the lash line. But it's a bit of a wider tapered brush, so it's not going to exactly look like a liner. I pull it up a little bit, see if I can kind of merge it. That's what's up there. There we go, that went on pretty well actually. I'm just going to try to blend out this corner a little. Now just taking the teensiest, tiniest little angled brush I have and bringing in that real dark crease shade. And now I'm going to use that as just a liner. I'm not even sweeping it on, I'm more just like dotting it on. Oh, let's get closer to the camera, Dee. And I'm going to pull it up a little bit, kind of wing it out a bit, and then merge it with the top color here. And now just kind of buff it out so it's not quite as intense. It can still be a little wing there, just not like a super sharp one. Sweep it along just to kind of blend all that together. And there we go. Now we just kind of have a gradient from light to dark and then dark to light again. So I'm gonna put on a little bit of eyeliner and mascara, maybe some lashes, see how I feel, and I'll come back to show you the finished look. Alright, here's our finished look for both sides. For this side, I lined my waterline with a bright purple just to kind of match with this cool tone purpley bluey look we're doing here. And then I gave it just a little bit of a gentle wing and paired it with those same demi wispies that I used in the first look, the ones that kind of get longer near the tip, just because I thought that matched this kind of darker over here kind of aesthetic look. I paired the look on this side with this liquid lip liner from the same collection, you know, just to try it out. And then on this side, I did the same purple in the waterline, and then I did line just a little bit with a black liquid eyeliner, but I didn't wing it out. I just used it to have something for the false lashes to kind of blend in with. And for these, I chose these particular type of wispies that kind of have these little spiky points on them, but otherwise are kind of even all the way around for this nice gradient look. And then I paired it with this shade for liquid lipstick. You know, maybe I should actually look at what these are called. This is Shall We Slay, and this is Icing on the Wall. Admittedly, I did try to overcompensate a little bit for the fallout by putting on a lot, and I mean a lot, of blue highlighter in this area. So, you don't have to do that. Really, for all of these different looks, whether it's like this gradient look, the darker color in the outer corner and the lighter color in the inner corner, or the kind of glowy effect in the middle we had in the last look, or just look that came on the back of these, it doesn't really matter what colors you're using. You don't have to use these crazy outlandish blues if you don't want to. You can do this with the most boring of brown and warm neutrals you want. The idea still stays the same regardless. I just, you know, I wanted some blue in my life today, so here we are. So, of the 4 different eyeshadow looks I did, well, this is technically 8, there we go. 4 different eyeshadow looks I did. Which one is your favorite? Tell me down in the comments below. You know, starting with these little quad guys like this, they're cheap and easy way to just experiment with eyeshadow placement without spending a whole bunch of money. And that way, when you do want to move on to a bigger palette, like say this 9-pan palette I did a video with, you kind of can already get an idea of where you want things to go. Or you can just sort of pick 4 out of here to make your own little quad to work with and play around with. Or if you find yourself with one of these like freaking gigundo palettes, this one's from Makeup Revolution, you maybe can start to look at this and be a little less overwhelmed and be able to hone in on maybe 4 or 5 colors that you do want to work with in this, and not just be like, ah, when you look at it and are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. But yeah, it's just these little quad guys that I started with. So, you know, give them some love if you want to play with some eyeshadow looks. You don't have to get these ones in particular, like most brands have these. I'm not going to tell you what to do or what to buy. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and a subscribe and all that. If you have some ideas of other things you'd like me to try to show off or explain with what I know, let me know in the comments as well, or even just like some other palettes that you'd like to see me create some different looks with, because I honestly thought this was really fun, kind of like doing these different looks on each eye. I mean, I'm sure I would look like a total weirdo if I went outside in some of these, but you know what, it washes off, or I just might not care and be a total weird out in public anyway. Well, with that, I will see you in the next video.